can we have a light-hearted conversation about grief? I'm going to ask you, Dr. Michelle, where I think all of us, the three of us, we live in this realm, right? And everywhere we go, we want to talk about it all the time. And it's our favorite subject. We're like the bride who's getting married, who's designing her wedding. Like everybody, all she wants to talk about is the wedding. For me, Dr. Michelle, I love this conversation because I feel like people grow. Tell me your take on first introduce yourself to our audience and then tell me your take on just having this conversation on grief.
Sure. Yes. Hi, everybody. I'm Michelle Mariscal. And, my journey with grief started early. And I think the repetition of it, often and a lot, just kind of indicated to me, oh, this is a theme in my life. And let me let me look at this more. Let me find tools. Let me find resources. And at some point, I realized, just like you were saying, I talk about it all the time because all of us, 100% of us, are grievers. And I think it's just what's so beautiful about this, not only this panel, but the whole retreat and all of the topics. I call grief a buffet. You really need and I encourage many different ways of processing these really challenging emotions so that we can also live with that other spectrum, the other end of the spectrum, which is also that lightheartedness. So that's why it actually became a part of my life and why I started directly doing the grief recovery method work and just to bring people back to that sense of vitality. Yes, loss is a part of life. And if I have the tools and resources, I can really understand and process these emotions. And not that I won't get sad again, but when you have access to all the resources, a sad memory can come and it's like a wave that comes and you learn how to ride it. And then you're right back into a funny memory of this loved one or something that you're so grateful for. Like that's what lives on in your heart is this gratefulness of what came out of that loss.
Oh, I love that. I absolutely love that. Okay, Coach E, I want to ask you the same question. So, do you feel like you're talking about grief all the time? Number one. And is it your favorite subject, which I think is absolutely okay? And I guess also, there are moments where you're actually having a grieving day, but you're also can laugh at something. And I think people don't realize that as well.
I think I probably talk about it way more than I realize. And I think what pushes you to keep talking about it is simply that nobody's talking about it.
Yeah.
And that bothered me. And I had nobody to talk to about grief. And I just thought, this is really weird. It's just, I heard the same thing over and over. Get over it, get over it, get over it.
Mhm.
And so I started getting over it the best way I could. I said, I'm going to have to manage this and figure it out because this isn't working. And so when I do talk about it, I get the same thing a lot, pushback. Nobody wants to hear about that.
Yeah.
Move on from that. You're not going to make any money doing that. Oh, if you only know how many times I hear that. And then, like you said, you can be somewhere. Yesterday was classic. I was in the car and I don't know what song it was today, but I was a song that I remember. And I kind of got a little mad and I was like, you're supposed to be here and you suck. And I was just talking trash to them. And then I just started laughing because I was like, if he was here, we'd just be, we'd be laughing. So like you said, it could go from anger to ha 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 to whatever really fast. But if you don't know how to handle that, then you just feel like you're going to break down 24 hours a day. So I tell people there was a time I could not have spoken about grief on the level that I do because I was letting it eat me alive. And now, no way. No, you need to talk about it. It's part of life. And you're not going to get through every person you lose if you don't do something.
Yeah. We're changing the subject of grief, and that is so cool. Like we're on the edge of changing the subject of grief, which I think is amazing. Please, everyone, let me introduce you to Charlene Lamb, and her program is Curating Grief. And I am so excited to have Charlene come on. Charlene, same question to you. Do you feel like you're talking about grief all the time? And How does it feel to be a game changer on the subject of grief? Because I remember for me in 2006, I shared earlier before we got on online, when I Googled grief, and we're going to get into this next, only thing I could find were the stages. How does it feel to be someone who's talking about it all the time?
Yeah, I do talk about it all the time. Or I'd say like I talk about grief and I talk about loss,
Yeah.
and it's often I'm talking about life.
Yeah.
Right? Like I might say grief coach because people seem to understand that, but I often say, well, actually, it's like I'm a life after loss coach.
Mm.
Right? How do you want to live your life now and in the context of loss? So it does feel like a really lovely way to balance that
Yeah.
and to rebalance it.
Yeah.
Right? I think that's what these conversations are about, of saying like, okay, we know there's all this out there. What do we want to bring into it? So I love these conversations. So thank you
Yeah.
so much for having me. And sorry to be joining late.
No, you're
Woo!
not at all. You came at a perfect timing. So, everyone listening live who's not here today, and who people who are joining the show, all of our guests, please put any questions that you may have in the chat. We will definitely share those questions. We want you guys engaging. But I want to say this right now, today, right? On July 12th, we have a powerhouse of women right now talking about grief. So I want to start with you, Dr. Michelle, and I hope it's okay if I call you Dr. Michelle.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
So in 2006, I was a real estate agent. I was sitting in a realtor's open house, and my 17-year-old daughter called and said that she screamed in the phone, I lost Austin. Austin was my 10-year-old nephew, and he was my sister's son. I heard you say something on your video the other day, and I think it was so true. I went out on this urge to like try to fix her. So part of that fixing her was that I went to the computer and I did this Google search, and I came up with this list of 5 stages. And I brought them over to her like they were precious, right? Here's how you're going to grieve. And I brought over these stages, and every day I would call her and check on her. And I would ask her, how are you doing today? And she perceived it in her mind, what stage are you in? And we kept trying to make the stages fit, and none of them fit. Give me, my question to you is, why is it that we want these stages to work for us? What do we as grievers want to be?
I think it has just so much to do with these overwhelming emotions and not having, because we're not a culture that teaches or engages in grief circles, or this understanding of what we might strive for is like what's normal and natural. And I say that because when there was a point where I was in so over my head with emotions, and I knew the 5 stages, but I also thought I was having a nervous breakdown. I and I had no context of understanding what I was kind of searching for. What is normal? Is this normal? Am I normal? And again, I think that that's a gap. That's a gap that has occurred for us, because if we're not brought up with this openness to understand and speak about grief, and understand that it can be a whole lot of emotions that happened, and all of them are normal and natural. That was one of the things that I did for myself, was because I tend to start on the intellectual. I did learn that you cannot solve a problem of the heart by going to the head. But my journey started with seeking out who's doing research on this. And because again, that's my context. I go look at research, and it wasn't helping at all. But what I will say is that what did help was what I saw when I did research was, oh, well, this person over here named these emotions, and this person over here named this set of tasks. And so I just was able to finally just let myself be, that I may experience some of those 5 stages of grief. I may experience some of this also. And whatever I'm experiencing, apparently, because no one has, everybody has a different idea about it, then I must be normal. So it gave me something to hang on to. And I think that's really why I call it the urban myth of 5 stages, is that maybe people will experience those, maybe not. But we just don't want to box anybody into this template, because our emotional life is not a template.
Yeah. Yes. I agree with you 100%. 100%. Okay, Coach E, my question for you is, when I realized that the stages didn't work was at this point. About 6 months after Austin died, I was talking to Erica on the phone, and she said, "Today I'm in denial." And this is literally what happened. I'm not joking. I was like, "Denial?" And then I had the phone up, and I was like, "She's losing her mind. The grief is making her go crazy." And I said this to her, "You know Austin died, right?" Like, I lowered my voice and said it because I couldn't figure out it didn't fit, right? How could she be in denial at this late part in her life? Tell me what you think, how denial actually does fit into the grief. How does it fit into our experience of grief?
I think denial fits into our experience of grief a little bit differently. Denial, when we're talking about the 5 stages, has to do with them denying that person's in that situation of their long-term illness, because that's what the original 5 stages of grief were based off of, her studies within a hospice and what the families were going through. And so that's where we get caught up of misunderstanding. What she studied and gave us was amazing for that type of life-ending facility situation, but it doesn't work out here with us. You do experience denial, but it's not a denial of, oh, they're going to live, oh, they're going to be back walking through the house. It's a denial of the life change. It's a denial of, oh my God, they're gone and everything is different. I'll give my denial. I'm a single mother. What? How'd that happen? Denial. Not that I was saying I couldn't accept. It was just like things that I never thought were a part of my life. I had to wake up and say, these are now part of my life. And there was a denial initially of, oh my God, I'm the breadwinner.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Oh wow, I'm now everything to this child. Oh my goodness, I lost my other child. Oh my goodness. So you have these little pieces of denial of things. I remember my sister was with me right after my husband died, and this is a little good piece of denial. And she said, your purse is in the car. I said, yes, my husband always gets my purse. And she goes, he's not here. And I thought, oh, and that's that piece of denial that hit me. Like, I knew he was gone, but in my mind, it's those little things that people may not realize that we have yet to quite accept that we're missing. And he got my purse everywhere we went. To this day, I have a hard time carrying my purse, but that's just an ideal of what we have. Whereas the denial that Elizabeth Kubler-Ross was talking about had to do with denying that the person was ill, denying that the person was going to pass. We've already lost the person, however we lost them. And so it's more of a denial of the life changes we're about to face.
Yeah. Thank you. I love that. I absolutely love that. Charlene, my question to you is, I don't know that there wasn't like a moment in the beginning where I was like, I have to accept Austin's death, because I was so mad. This is the truth. I couldn't fathom how a 10-year-old child had drowned. How did that happen to us? Acceptance was the furthest thing from my mind. So even though we were going down the list, she and I kept skirting over acceptance. We would do bargaining, denial, anger, and depression, and really stay in anger and bargaining and depression, because the other two, those are the 2 top ones we couldn't figure out. Is there a moment where we come to acceptance? Is acceptance a part of our recovery? And how do you look at acceptance? How do you share that with your clients?
Yeah. I love what Dr. Terry Daniel, she talks about the 5 stages of grief and kind of suggests, some people might hit all of those stages. And I love how she talks about they might be responses. We could think of them as like 5 potential responses after someone dies. You might have all 5 of them. You might have none of them. You might have a couple of them. Most of us, I imagine, also have a whole bunch of other ones. Like I certainly did. My mother died 10 years ago. And one of those, like denial related, would maybe be disbelief.
Yeah.
Right. I think that's a very common one. Even 10 years on, occasionally, I'm kind of like, wait, what do you mean she's like gone? Like she's really dead? And that was certainly much more common closer to when she died. And for me, when I think of acceptance and when I talk about it with my clients, it's this idea of not resisting what is, not just the fact that the person is dead, but all around it, right? That it's like when I think about what's most painful and has been most painful for me, it's not even so much that my mom is dead, but it's that she shouldn't have died so young.
Yeah.
But she did.
Yeah.
Right? I wish she'd had more time in retirement, but she didn't.
Right.
It's that kind of resisting what actually happened and trying to argue our way out of it. That I think caused me the most pain and the most suffering, and kind of maybe got in the way of the reframing that I found very helpful for me. And creative reframing is very much an important part of my work. So I might put it that way.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you. Thank you so much. Dr. Michelle, my question for you is, why do you think that we as grievers, it's almost like the stages are like a checklist, right? It's like the griever is going to come and go, okay, because that's how I felt like when I brought this paper to Erica. Why do we need that checklist? Why do we need grief to be, I'm going to use your words, all neat and tidy in a box? Why do we need it that clean?
Yeah, I think I'll kind of refer back to how I was going about trying to be with grief. And that was using my head, using my intellect, because we're trained so well to learn things, and there's a process. Things have a process. That's kind of a cultural thing. Like when you go to school, we're kind of put into this linear way of thinking. And so I think it has a little bit to do with that, wanting to have that same kind of understanding that there is a beginning and an end to this thing that we call grief. And as we learn, it's not linear at all. We can't solve or be with or come to any acceptance staying in our head, trying to do the checklist. We must really be in our heart, go to our heart, and have those experiences of the emotions.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm going to ask you the same question, Coach E. Why do we need to put grief into a nice, tidy, clean box? And it's like, here we are. I'm going to step in here. I'm going to do all my grieving, and then I'm going to bounce out, and I'm going to be new again. I don't know, something like that. And I think the stages aid in us stepping into that.
I think because we live in the Western world, I'm not speaking of other areas, we live in a very corporate society, a very capitalist society, and so grief stops all those things. So when I was going through mine, I really came to realize, yeah, they do not care. I had been back at work, I think, when my dad passed a couple of days, and I ended up breaking down one night. He meant a really lot to me, and my supervisor walks up and goes, "You're still going through that?" And I said, he had literally only been dead 2 weeks. And she was like, and in the most non-empathetic way, she goes, "Oh yeah, I lost a brother. I liked him a lot. I missed him too." So we live in a society where death gets in the way. We cannot take this time. You cannot be off work. We give you 3 days to grieve when we know it takes 7 to 12 days to even get a body together sometimes, depending on how the person passed away. So we live in an unrealistic society that has no respect for emotions, empathy, or even financially what you may have to go through to take care of your loved one. And then it's like, we don't want you to come back here and talk about it either. So you go over there and you take care of it in that box. You go have those grief stages that may or may not apply to you on any level. And then you come back and act like it never happened. So it's not really our fault. I really think it's been so ingrained into our society that we don't know what to do. And unfortunately, we carry that craziness when we go visit someone in a different world. I have other people I've talked to. I have a friend in England and Africa, and they tell me the different things that they do. And I'm like, really? Wow. And how long they get off work. But we go to those places and we're like, why are you all still doing this? But they're healthier than we are when it comes to grief because they're given more time. They take more time and they respect that this person had a place in people's lives. So we forget the person that's lost may be a huge presence in a lot of lives. So it's more so, in a nutshell, we want to put it in the box because it's been trained for us to do so. And then when it doesn't fit in the box, we start to fall apart.
But also putting it in the box, going on to what you just said, putting it in the box also helps everybody around us who's struggling with our grief, right? If we keep it in the box, then it helps them to feel more comfortable. So we have a griever that just shared, my mother died when I was 9 years old. It took me 30 plus years to accept it and to try to see the good it did to me. Yes, I tried that. And basically, it taught me to enjoy life and that it can be taken anytime to allow yourself to be happy and live day to day. Thank you. Thank you, Shara, for that. Thank you for sharing. And our heart to yours. Charlene, I often have clients that will come to me and the first thing they tell me is what stage they're in their grief. That is like they open the sentence, well, this is the stage that I'm in. Tell me, like, I don't try to fight back with them against it. I don't debunk the stages right there. I will later as we become more comfortable. Tell me what, when you're working with somebody and they want to be in that stage, how do you handle that?
Yeah, absolutely. Because some people really do want to believe that there are stages, right? Like we want to believe there's a checklist
Yeah.
that we'll go through all these steps and then we graduate and
Yeah.
we're done with grief. And that's often what I have to say to people. And, talking about living from the head up, from the neck up, I was very much like, oh, I can think my way through this. I got the news that my mother had died from a stroke, and I immediately started a checklist.
Mm.
That was my coping mechanism. I'm very much an instrumental style of griever. I wanted to do things. So I had a spreadsheet, I had a checklist, I had a binder that helped me to feel like I had some kind of control. So for some of us, and especially my clients who also tend to be that kind of person who's like, yeah, no, I'm very capable. Like, is there a list of stuff for me to do? I will do it. That idea of having a stage, of being able to self-identify where we are, to know where we are in this complicated process can feel very supportive. It can feel safe and feel like we have some control. And I often think like, oh my God, our poor human brains, like just trying to make sense of the enormity of what's happened, trying to make sense of situations that don't make sense, that can't make sense. So I think I acknowledge that, yeah, it feels good to feel like we have some kind of control. And if people want to believe that they're in a certain stage, we'll explore that. I'll bring in other theories, other grief models to kind of bring that in as an additional tool.
Yes.
Some of us want a list.
Yeah. Some of us want a list. Exactly. Dr. Michelle, I have a question for you. Was a disservice done to us by attaching the Kubler-Ross list to grief? Has there been a disservice? Did it slow us down from moving forward in healing as a society, as a human race?
I don't like to call anything a disservice when we're talking about grief only from that standpoint of at a point in time when Elizabeth Kubler-Ross's work, I mean, it was so foundational with the population that she was working with, which was a population who were heading toward death. So to some extent, there, all of those emotions, those stages, people, as you can probably kind of get this feeling that like it was grasped onto and labeled now, the stages of grief after you've lost someone. I kind of look at it as we kind of drew it in because we were looking for something. So from that standpoint, I always feel like, there's a looking or a culture who is very linear based. And the truth of it is, it's our experience then that informs us. We begin to realize, some of us maybe got a little boxed in with it and felt like we couldn't move, but there were providers and friends and probably enough people, because you hear the stages being so debunked now, but sometimes it's grabbing onto something, having an experience with it, and then finding our own heart about it. That is the process. So I really don't ever want to say, that stopped us in our tracks, because really it was what was available to us. And now, for many of us, we're all in this conversation, and many of us have realized, wow, no, that wasn't my experience at all. So, yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you. I love that. Thank you so much. Coach E, I have a question for you. Why does the brain need the stages? Why does the brain need the stages to help us through?
Well, we think it's logical. It's the logical way to grieve.
Yeah,
So we magically think if we have these 5 stages of grief that will logically be normal and will logically be in a different place in uh, a few weeks, 6 months, whatever we have put in our little brain that will take us to the next place. And then, you know, we forget the heart is there.
yeah,
We forget the heart is like, what are you talking about? The heart is literally laughing at you trying to logically make this connection with these stages of grief. Like, no, that's not what's going to happen. And so you can really be putting yourself through the ringer mentally trying to hit these stages of grief in X amount of time. And then the heart's going to kick in and say, no, not today.
yeah,
And then you're at a loss because you're like, okay, I'm back to square one. But you were really never logically there, but you had tried to talk your brain into following this pattern because it seems so great and it seems so good. But I want to piggyback real quick on what Dr. Michelle was saying. Look at the time. It was the 60s. We were coming out of a war. We had a lot of sick people from a variety of things, cancer, Agent Orange, all kind of different stuff that was going on. And so when she did this, the entire population jumped on it. And it logically seemed like this is great for the brain. Now we can function. Now we can get past all this craziness that's happened to us in the last few years. And people don't realize she put a lot of time in her study. It was over a year that she did that study before she even published anything. So it wasn't just something she just shot out of her butt, but she spent that time and researched it. So it did. The population took it as this is the logical step
yeah,
for me to take
yeah,
to live my life again.
yeah,
But it doesn't always work that way.
yeah. I remembered learning them in college. So, and Erica had learned them in college. So we both, it just seemed like it made sense because that's what we had learned in college. I'm gonna veer away. I want to read this real quick. I recently lost my wife of 53 years. My heart goes out to you, my friend Rick. I can't even imagine. As I go through the last 2 stages regularly, I accept her passing, but still have some really good days and some not so good days. Is it a normal process? I have read the book you just mentioned, recommended by the doctor, and I found that that allowed me to go through the grieving process better. Dr. Michelle, why don't you address Rick's comment?
Sure, and that you can hear in this question, is that a normal process? I think what is just so important for each and every person who is listening is to recognize that every relationship is unique and individual. And so, not even in our own lives, but as sometimes the comments that come from others, um, oh, I lost my wife too. I know how you feel. That's an untruth, because honestly, our relationships to the people in our life hold so much that is unique and individual to us. And so this is your process, Rick. I think was
Yep.
it Rick? Yes. Yes. It is your process, and it is absolutely normal and natural. And, one of the things that we talk about in the grief recovery method is that oftentimes what we're bumping up against are things that, those unmet hopes, dreams, and expectations that may kind of surface for us, or things that we want more of. Of course, we always want more with our loved one, better or different. So there could also be, some of those. What I am finding, and I don't know why so much these days, I think after COVID, it brought people to a precipice where they really needed to process these emotions. And I am talking more and more about this ball of rubber bands, that there's so many emotions in one event. If, the memory of one event comes up for us, there can be so many emotions in little tight rubber bands. So just allowing yourself to be with those emotions, and use some of the resources out of, there's some beautiful, beautiful resources that are given here. If you're a person who likes to journal, if you like to be in nature. So, of course, we're going to have those memories that may bring sadness, and really allowing yourself to go into that. What's that about? Is there more in that? Is, whether you're doing art or journaling or just allowing, and just be, and know that in allowing yourself to be with them, you're moving through something. You're moving through something. Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. Yes, Coach E, you'd like to speak to Rick as well?
Hi, Rick. I just wanted to say really quickly, keep in mind the 3 C's. There's, to honestly always choose, connect, and communicate with other people. That means choose what you want to do in your grief, connect with what resonates to you to feel better in your grief, but keep communicating to people, even if it's just saying, today I don't want that phone conversation. I can't today. But it's communicating to let someone know I'm okay, but I'm okay to not be okay today. So the choose, connect, and communicate, I think, are great tools that have recently come out. That you choose how you're handling your grief, you connect with what's going to resonate to heal within your grief, and then you communicate to someone that you're doing okay. Or you might communicate, I need to talk today, but just keep a little bit of that communication out there so that people aren't worried. So I hope that helps a little bit.
That's awesome. I love that advice. Great advice. Okay, Charlene, I'm going to move. This is the last half hour, so I'm going to move to other myths, right? So we did the stages. When Austin died, I kind of took the lead, and people were coming up to me saying this: "You're so strong. Thank God she has you. You're so strong." Now, here's the other thing. Even before people started saying that, I was telling myself to be strong. So, one of the myths that we tell ourselves during the grieving process for ourselves is that I have to be strong. I have to be strong for my children. I have to be strong for my husband. I had to be strong for my parents as they just lost a grandchild. So we're also telling ourselves to be strong, but people are also giving us that advice. What my question for you is, did you hear any of that while you were grieving for mom? And what's your advice for the person who is acting strong?
Oh yeah. I think I definitely had a bit of that narrative for myself of I couldn't fall apart in the first 2 years because I had to deal with my mother's house and the estate and all the things around the logistics. So I definitely had my own story around like, you can't fall apart. So I didn't really cry or really feel that much in the first 2 years. And then also I had family members saying, you're going to need to cry. You can't just be so strong. So there was a lot of critiquing, I think, on both sides
Mhm.
about how I was or was not processing. And now I kind of know, you know what? I was processing in the way that I knew how, in the way that I kind of needed to at that point. But in terms of talking about strength, I'll often ask clients to define strength for themselves
Mhm.
and to consider how they want to define strength,
Yeah.
right? That for me now, strength doesn't look like not crying.
Yeah.
For me, it looks like, oh, I can cry
Yeah.
and do the hard things
Yeah.
and have a soft heart. So it's a combination there. Like it's not a typical thing of what people think of when they say, be strong, right? It's so much of this is owning our process for ourselves. And, to Rick's question too, it really is, yeah, it's not like we've been saying, it's not on a linear track,
Yeah.
right? Sometimes you feel softer, sometimes you feel more tender, sometimes you feel good. And
Yeah.
that's part of it too. Feeling good is not a betrayal of our person, right? It's part of like figuring out how to live our lives, even with this loss. So, yeah, redefine strong for yourself.
Yeah, I shared recently, and I think Coach E, you'll get this. To me, strength was seeing Erica pick up the phone and call the funeral home, right? Um, Being the mother who has to take your other children to that same school. That's being strong, and I think that's what you're saying, Charlene. Is like she had to define what the strength was for her. Yet I was trying to act strong, which was totally keeping back my emotions because I was trying to be so strong for her. Okay, Coach E, I'm going to go into the next. Oh, yes, please, Michelle, Dr. Michelle.
Yeah, I just wanted to also add that it can be a way in which is if children are, if this is being modeled to children, be strong, it can actually also then begin to encompass another myth which they are learning, which is grieve alone. And so it really, that being strong cuts us off from that connection to people. And oftentimes I'm pretty convinced that with these, after a child dies and the two parents are grieving differently and maybe being strong for each other, that it's so common that divorce happens after the loss of a child. And I think that can have a lot to do with that, rather than supporting each other and being with each other and sharing the intimacy of these very challenging emotions. We kind of go to our corners and we're grieving alone. And again, children are learning that if they're watching it and or if they're being told you need to be strong for your brother or sister or your mom, anybody. They're learning that. So we need to kind of pay attention to that too.
I agree with you 100%. And one of the things that I often talk about and share is I can't imagine, Dr. Michelle, what it's like for the couple, right? They've lost a child. And this is what I felt with Erica and Lewis. They both are looking at each other and they're just seeing pain in the other person's face, right? So you're looking at your husband and all you see is the pain, which makes you want to try to fix him even more, which causes you to be strong. It's just a whole array going on just in the look of the face. So I'm going to share this comment, but I'm going to tie it into my question with Coach E. She says, Nazinga said, I was told just to pray. My response is, if you don't know how to pray, I probably won't be able to stand. The assumption annoyed me. one of the other myths is God will never give you more than you can handle. And we try to tie it into grief, right? Or really, a lot of times what we hear is, don't feel bad. Don't feel bad. And then a lady told me, she said, I feel like we hear that at church all the time. Don't feel bad. God wouldn't want you to feel that way. Don't feel bad. And literally what we're telling ourselves, the griever, is not to feel. So my question to you is that the myth, and how can we turn that around? And I'm tying it back into the God conversation too.
I think, oh my goodness, it's very prevalent. What we hear are all the wrong things from the loving church community. God needed an angel. You need to be strong. Just pray. It's going to be better. God doesn't give you more than you can bear. You don't know what I can bear. Okay. So when people say these things, they're actually, in reality, I don't necessarily feel that there's malice, but there's also no sense. It's like, did you think before you said anything you just said? If someone lost a child, baby, whatever it may be, 5 years old, 5 minutes old, 500 years old, to have someone say that God needed another angel, or you can have another baby, you're young. How do you know that person, that was their only shot? You don't know. So what happens in the religious community is the cliches take over, and there's no love behind what is said, because there's automatically thought, well, we've been saying this for 50 years. It's got to be loving. No, it's not. Because when someone told me, well, that was your son's giving up on life and he was done with life here on earth, it took everything I had not to knock them into the pulpit. And it wasn't a pastor or anything like that. It was just someone at the church. And I thought, what a dumb thing to say. And that began my chronicles of all the wrong things to say to people in grief. But it becomes overwhelming because people think faith automatically means you don't need a counselor.
Yeah.
You don't need to talk to someone. It means prayer is just going to fix everything. And it doesn't. Not because God doesn't hear you, because it just doesn't. You need a combination of your spirituality. Maybe you want pastoral counseling, but you're going to need somebody to help you through that grief. I stumbled around in that world for over a decade, and I could not figure out why I was not getting better with the loss of my husband and son. And finally, I went to a grief group and said, this is so stupid. Why am I doing this? And after that, the floodgates opened. I hadn't cried. I hadn't dealt with many things because I was trying to be, and in my race, not saying you all don't get it too, but we have it horribly bad, the strong Black woman syndrome of, you better not let anybody know you're struggling and dealing with, because you're a strong Black woman. And so you got that on top of being strong for your race, because what's wrong with you? And so now you got all these things. And what do they really cause? They actually cause anxiety and depression on an even higher level for the woman. They actually cause you to possibly lose the marriage that you're in if you've lost someone in your family. They actually cause you to, I'm going to say it, people don't want to hear it, have a nervous breakdown.
Yes.
And so I remember sitting in that, it was actually a church group, and she's the person that I've told her, you're the inspiration that led me to really open up to my grief. And she sat there and she just let us talk and say whatever we had to say, all different races, all different people, and to hear their stories. And I thought, wow, somebody's out here really saying we don't have to be strong. So we've got to stop saying the strong thing. And then on top of that, we've got to really look at faith. We don't know. I'm going to give an example of my own kid. He's 27 years old now, and he's doing much better. But we were struggling because when the death happened, he was 11. And so we struggled through a lot of our grief because neither one of us knew what to do or where to go. And what did he say? I'm mad at God. God didn't need Daddy and my brother. And to this day, he still struggles with his faith. So we've got to understand people's thought changes and how they feel about God. So we got to be careful about the spirituality. I think it's great to have and to connect with, but help people to know God gave us counselors and doctors and all these lovely things to help us too. So help people to see, to put it together.
Girl, first of all, I love all your answers, and each one of them could be a show on its own. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I love it. I love it. Charlene, one of the other myths. Okay, so be strong was what I was hearing and what I was telling myself. But one of the things I also told myself was that I should keep busy. I tend to be a very let me be in front of it type person. I one of you we talked about the checklist, and so when they were coming home from the lake, I asked permission to make the first call to the funeral home, and my brother-in-law said yes, you can call the funeral home, and that put me at this spot, which was perfect for me, that I got to do all the things. I got to make all the calls. I got to be there. I was letting people know what was going on. And the whole time I was keeping busy, I didn't have to be grieving because I was being strong and keeping busy. Share a little bit about the aspect, and I will get to the comment here. But share a little bit about the aspect of the person who's really wanting to keep busy and stay in front of the grief. The myth of keeping busy will help you stay away from the pain.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. A lot of my clients are in that space of like, they're like, they already have a lot in their lives. They tend to be busy women. A lot of them are entrepreneurs. They have families. They might be caregivers as well. They already have a lot going on. So there's a lot of, I can't let anything down. I'm just going to add more, right, to my plate. But there is that protection of feeling like it's going to protect them to
Mhm.
keep busy, distract myself. I don't have time to fall apart. I don't have time to grieve. I need to take care of other people who are grieving, right? There's that aspect. And unfortunately, that is a myth, right? Where like the emotions do catch up with us. There's the very popular analogy of waves of grief, an ocean of grief. And for a lot of my clients, it really is this feeling of they've been trying to hold back an ocean. And usually when they come to work with me, they're like, it's leaking out.
Yeah.
I'm crying at various times. I'm snapping at people in my life. I don't know what's happening. And it really is like you've been trying to hold back an ocean.
Yeah.
It's popping out in different ways. That pressure is building up. So it can be a coping mechanism like it was for me. And then at some point, it no longer serves us. It's starting to not really protect us. It's starting to do harm and really to get in the way of, as we've been kind of talking about, some of these myths that seem like they might help, but really add to anxiety, depression, disconnection, when so much of what we actually want is more connection.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing. Let's put up the user who said, I'm not very religious. And I'm going to bring Dr. Michelle back on. Dr. Michelle, I want to talk about people encouraging you to lean into your faith or open the Bible, or kind of like what Coach E was talking about. I know for me, I was very involved in my church at the time. I walked into the church thinking that they were going to give me what I needed, and a lot of what I was getting was read your Bible, that, and what I really needed was, I didn't know, someone to just listen to me, and I needed to be talking about it, and I didn't know. Do we lead people wrong when we try to push them back into their faith? And does the griever themselves have the option to do what they like? Kind of like what Coach E was saying, like go and get help and be involved in church. Do both of them work together? So I hope that question is clear.
Yes, yes. And I was going to refer back to, as Coach E says, the 3 C's: choose, connect, and communicate. And I know for me, the very first loss that I sustained was the biggest one. And it was the loss of my brother, and the person that I did not want to be on this earth without. And in my experience at that time, because of the experience in my church with my family, it really drove me away. I had already been starting to ask questions, inner questions, deeper questions. So at that time, it was a bit of a spiritual awakening for me, because I felt like there was something deeper and more. So I went out into the world to learn about all those other things. And what I will say now is that my faith and my beliefs is sort of like I did a full circle. And sometimes that's what grief takes us into, is finding out about who am I really. And this whole topic of unconditional love. What I'll say with the very most recent and last loss that I have been with was my older brother's death. And I was so clear that I was being invited in to be so unconditionally loving in a way that I could never experience if I hadn't had these other experiences, and recognizing how his experience was something that I wanted to talk about and I wanted to be with, and how he was holding it in his faith with his process. I just, every time I went and visited, he lived out of state, but I went up every 6 weeks, 4 to 6 weeks. I just, like, it was love. I realized it was love just being with him. There was nothing, even though I think I know a lot and have a lot of experience with grief, he didn't need any of that. All he needed was me to love him for his experience as he was experiencing it in his faith. And again, that kind of, it allowed me to stay strong with, because the crux of my faith is that unconditional love. And so, yes, I'm trying to see if I rounded out, came back to the answer.
I love your share. It's just so beautiful. Wow, what an awesome share, though, being there for your brother and being there. I think a lot of us as grievers struggle with our faith. At the same time, the grief can cause us to struggle with our faith. How would you help a griever who is absolutely struggling in their faith?
Yeah, I would just allow that is an experience. It's an opportunity to, again, I just think I love those 3 C's, Coach E. I love that. Really choose that powerfully and just look for yourself. Like, something's wrong. This isn't working for me right now in this moment. And as part of my experience, I'm going to be in question and just stay. What I always say is just stay in an open question. As grief is, it takes us to all kinds of places. And if we just allow that, yep, I'm mad at God right now, and I'm just going to be okay with that. And just know that, if we have had a strong faith and this is something that is challenging us, just also recognize that, those, there are, if we seek those people that we can connect with and communicate with about that very question, who can help us in that safe way to be with that conversation of, this is also a part of my grief. I have lost my faith. So, yes, I don't think just as a pat thing, we should say, rely on your faith, because we have no idea how they're experiencing what is happening.
Yes, great answer. I love it. And yes, Naizinga, we do have the right to be mad. Coach E, I know you want to reply to her, and then I'm going to ask the final question of you. And that gives us ample time for each one of us to just share with this audience anything that we want to share, plus also give you a chance to share. And I'll get to each one of you, where people can get into contact with you, how can they work with you, and all of those things. So do your reply, and then I'm going to ask you one wrap-up question.
So really quickly, I want to add on to Dr. Michelle that we also have to keep in mind, for those of you out here, that just because we go to church, they're not trained in helping us with grief.
Yeah.
It's a great place to be. And so there's nothing wrong with stopping and saying, I need to get help. I've lucked out. And there was an amazing woman in the church. She is not certified or anything like that, but that's what she does because she had a huge tragedy in her life of losing her mom to a domestic violence situation, and she does it very, very well. But if you need that, then look for a pastor that has been trained in those things, or ask them, is there someone in the church that can help me? Because I remember telling my pastor, and she took my hand and she placed it on top of the young lady's hand. She said, I don't do that. I don't know how to do it. So I appreciated that she let me know. I feel what you're saying, but good God, I'm not the one to do it. And so there's nothing wrong with understanding that uh, we may have to leave the church alone for a while and have an eat, pray, love moment somewhere else, take a trip, get our head clear. It doesn't mean you don't love God. It just may mean that that version of how they're healing may not be working for you.
I love that. I absolutely love that. Okay, so I'm going to ask the last question to you. One of the final myths that I want to talk about, and we only have a short time, so I'm just asking it to you, is replace the loss. And my question to you is, how many times did you hear, girl, there's plenty of fish in the sea, go find you another man, or just alluding to that, replacing the loss, which can be so totally painful.
I'll be really quickly. It started literally the day after he passed. You're young, you'll get another husband. And I think people forgot I was 34 when he passed, that we had already been married 20 years. It was not going to be that easy to get another husband. Oh, you can have another son. But again, no one knew my tubes were tied. So no, I couldn't have another son. So here's those things that people are just throwing out, thinking that everyone's replaceable. My husband has never been replaceable. My child is not replaceable. And so you cannot replace the loss. And yes, I've seen people do that. They jump into the next marriage. They're miserable because they're really kind of living. I don't know if you've all seen Rebecca really quickly. It's an Alfred Hitchcock movie. Watch the movie. That'll tell you can't replace a wife or a husband. And so you're in these places haunted by the person that used to be in the marriage. You're trying to have a baby. The baby doesn't look like the other baby. The baby doesn't act like the other child because they're not the same person. So you cannot replace who God gave us. You have to accept the loss and begin to heal and work on it, because when you try to replace irreplaceable people, and we're all irreplaceable, we're all amazing. When you try to replace irreplaceable people, it really backfires. So yes, I got that literally the minute his head was no longer available to get back up. It was like, you're still young. It's going to happen for you. So
Yeah. Yes. How can people work with you, Coachy?
oh, people can work with me by going to my website, www.biggerfishtofrycoaching.com. And you can send me a notice. You can go to my Instagram page. Everything's Bigger Fish to Fry Coaching. Make sure you put the coaching, because there's a guy that actually does fishing and he's not me. So put the coaching on the end. But if you go to Instagram, any of those things, you can DM me. You can go to the website, however you want to get in touch with me. I'm easy to get in touch with. I have a Facebook page as well. We're in the middle of rebranding, but I have left all those things up while we rebrand. But I'm available and ready to help you in whatever way I can help you to get.
We'll be back for a private interview on the 20th of September.
Yes, I'll be back on September 20th, discussing grief as well as we're doing here today. And hopefully some people will join me when I have my discussion.
They will definitely. Dr. Michelle, how can people work with you?
Yes, so my website is www.energym.org, and they can find my book there as well, Growing Through Grief. My book is on Amazon as well. Yep, so that's probably the best place at my website.
This has been the most amazing, fun time that I've ever had talking about grief. I can't even tell you guys. Just thank you so much. And Miss Charlene, how can people work with you?
Yeah, you can go to my website, which is charlenelam.com, or find me on Instagram at curating_grief. And my session is next week on the 19th. So please do join us if we can. And I just want to close with saying thank you so much, Sharon. I loved how you brought Austin and your story into this sharing that we're all doing. And to the audience, I just want to say you're not doing it wrong.
Yeah.
Learning how to live with loss is already so hard. We don't need to add extra judgment. You are not doing it wrong.
Yes. Yes.